Hey guys, tonight we're embarking on a very special journey, one that will hopefully lull you into a state of profound relaxation, possibly even before we hit our first major historical revelation. Imagine, if you will, the gentle lapping of the Nile against a papyrus reed boat, the warm, dry air of the ancient Sahara settling around you like a comforting blanket, and the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoing from a city that most history books just skipped over. You're drifting back, far back, to a land often overshadowed by its famous northern neighbor, Egypt, a place of golden sands, black skinned pharaohs, and pyramids. Yes, but pyramids with a distinctly different, perhaps even more charmingly unassuming profile. This isn't your typical pyramid tour. This is something far more tranquil, far more forgotten. Tonight, we're setting our sleepy sights on the ancient kingdom of Kush. Never heard of it? Perfect. That's precisely why we're here. This was a realm of immense wealth, particularly in gold and profound cultural significance. Yet it often gets relegated to a footnote in the grand epic of human history. You might think you know ancient history, but you probably won't survive 5 minutes in a sandstorm without a proper camel, let alone navigating the political intrigues of the Meroitic court, which surprisingly involved a lot less dramatic screaming and a lot more quiet, strategic maneuvering. Think less Game of Thrones and more very slow chess match played by people in linen. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It genuinely helps these sleepy narratives reach more fellow insomniacs and history buffs. And as you settle in, maybe let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to imagine us all scattered across the globe, united by a shared appreciation for the quieter corners of the past. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. We're going to begin our story not with a bang, but with the gentle, rhythmic hum of the Nile River, the very lifeblood of this ancient land. You find yourself aboard a simple wooden boat, perhaps a felucca with a single, broad sail, gliding southwards. The sun, a sleepy orange orb, dips towards the horizon, casting long, shimmering shadows across the water. The banks are a blur of green, then sudden, stark desert. This river, this magnificent, ancient waterway, was the highway of the Kushites, connecting their scattered settlements and allowing them to tap into the vast trade networks of the ancient world. Without the Nile, there is no Kush. It was their main street, their supermarket, and their slightly murky bathtub all rolled into one. And as you drift, you can almost hear the distant, drowsy sounds of river life, a splash, a bird call, the murmur of voices from a far off village. It's a peace that time forgot, and one that we're gently, quietly reclaiming tonight. As your phantom boat continues its gentle drift south, the scenery slowly shifts. The lush, narrow strip of green along the Nile's banks starts to widen in places, giving way to broader plains before the desert reasserts its golden dominance. You're leaving the familiar territory of ancient Egypt behind, crossing what was once a less defined border, a porous membrane where cultures mingled and traded long before modern nations drew their stark lines in the sand. This was, in essence, the very beginning of Nubia, a region that stretches from modern day southern Egypt into Sudan. And within this vast expanse, the kingdom of Kush began to truly take shape. Think of it like this: while Egypt had its monumental pyramids and grand temples, Kush was developing its own distinct identity, often influenced by, but never entirely subservient to, its powerful northern neighbor. It's easy to imagine a small trading post on the riverbank, perhaps just a few mud brick huts, where Egyptian merchants would haggle over gold, ivory, and exotic animal skins with the local Nubians. These were the humble beginnings, the slow, organic growth of a civilization that would eventually rival Egypt itself in wealth and influence. You might even hear the soft bleating of goats being led to water, or the gentle thud of a pestle grinding grain, the timeless sounds of human activity in a land shaped by the river. One mainstream historical fact about this early period is that the earliest evidence of a centralized power in Nubia, which would evolve into Kush, dates back to around 2500 BCE with the emergence of the Kerma culture. This was long before the Kushites would directly rule Egypt, but it shows a sophisticated society already developing its own unique artistic and architectural styles. Imagine them meticulously crafting beautiful pottery, their hands moving with practiced ease, or perhaps constructing large, circular dwellings that were quite unlike anything found in contemporary Egypt. Now, for a quirky tidbit. During these formative years, the Nubians, and later the Kushites, had a rather unusual method for dealing with unwanted pests, especially mosquitoes. They would often burn certain aromatic woods, like frankincense, not just for their pleasant smell in rituals, but because the smoke was believed to repel insects. So, as you drift past these early settlements, you might catch a faint, sweet, smoky scent on the breeze, a kind of ancient mosquito coil. It certainly beats trying to sleep with a mosquito buzzing in your ear, a timeless annoyance that spans millennia. You can almost feel the gentle plume of smoke wafting over you, a natural, soothing repellent against the tiny irritations of the ancient world. Historians still argue whether the early interactions between Egypt and Nubia were predominantly peaceful and cooperative, or if they were marked by constant conflict and Egyptian domination. There's evidence for both. Of course, sometimes Egyptian pharaohs would send military expeditions south, seeking to control trade routes or exploit resources. Other times, you find ample proof of cultural exchange and peaceful commerce, with Nubian mercenaries serving in Egyptian armies and Egyptian goods finding their way deep into Nubian territories. It's never as simple as good guys and bad guys when you look at these long, complex, historical relationships, is it? More like a constantly shifting dance, sometimes a waltz, sometimes a slightly awkward tango. As our imaginary boat continues its tranquil journey, you start to notice the landscape becoming more rugged, hinting at the challenges and resources that defined Kush. The distant hills begin to reveal telltale signs of geological riches, veins of quartz, hints of copper, and most importantly, the shimmering promise of gold. This precious metal, so coveted by civilizations across the ancient world, would become the very foundation of Kushite power and influence. It wasn't just a luxury, it was the currency of their diplomacy, the fuel for their armies, and the adornment for their kings and queens. And it all started with a subtle glint in a sun-baked rock face, a secret whispered by the earth itself. You can almost feel the weight of that potential wealth, even now, just thinking about it. As your tranquil journey continues south along the Nile, you begin to notice the landscape changing more dramatically. The scattered settlements grow denser, the cultivation along the riverbanks becomes more extensive, and in the distance, against the hazy horizon, you might spot the unmistakable, albeit slightly squatter, silhouettes of pyramids. But these aren't the towering, iconic structures of Giza. These are the pyramids of Napata, the early capital of the kingdom of Kush. Imagine pulling your boat ashore, perhaps just as the sun begins its slow, sleepy descent, bathing everything in a soft, golden light. You step onto the sandy bank, feeling the warmth of the day still lingering in the earth. Before you lies a burgeoning city, a testament to early Kushite power and ambition. Napata, situated near the fourth cataract of the Nile, was strategically important. It wasn't just a place where people lived, it was a religious center, particularly for the worship of Amun, the same powerful deity revered in Egypt. The Kushites, you see, absorbed a lot of Egyptian culture, but they always put their own unique spin on it. Their version of Amun, for instance, might have been depicted with a ram's head, distinct from the Egyptian iconography. One mainstream historical fact about Napata is that it served as the primary capital of Kush from around 750 BCE until about 590 BCE. During this period, Kush was at its zenith, strong enough to not only maintain its independence, but to actually conquer and rule its formidable northern neighbor, Egypt. This was the era of the Black Pharaohs, a time we'll delve into more deeply very soon. But for now, picture Napata as a bustling hub, its markets alive with the murmur of trade, its temples echoing with the chanting of priests, and its royal cemeteries already beginning to fill with those distinctly Kushite pyramids. Now for a quirky tidbit about these pyramids. Unlike their Egyptian counterparts, which usually had steep sides and were built with ramps, Kushite pyramids were much narrower and steeper, almost like elongated triangles, and they were built over tombs that were actually dug beneath the pyramid, not inside it. So, if you were an ancient grave robber, you'd have to do some serious underground tunneling, which sounds like far too much effort for a relaxing night. You can almost hear the soft, sandy whisper of the wind as it drifts past these ancient structures, a gentle reminder of the centuries they have stood watch over the desert. Historians still argue whether the move of the capital from Napata to Meroe later on was primarily due to increased Egyptian aggression, environmental factors like desertification, or perhaps simply a desire for a more strategic trading location further south. It's a puzzle with many pieces, and no single answer satisfies everyone. Was it a retreat, a strategic shift, or a gradual evolution? The debate itself is quite soothing, isn't it? A gentle mental exercise as you drift, as you wander through the imagined streets of Napata. You might notice the distinct architecture, buildings made of local sandstone, perhaps some adorned with carvings that blend Egyptian motifs with indigenous Kushite elements. You might see artisans at work, perhaps smelting copper or fashioning intricate jewelry from the gold that was already flowing into the city from the mines further south. The air would be dry and warm, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and the distant, rhythmic tap, tap, tap of a stone carver. This wasn't just a collection of mud huts. This was a capital, a center of power and culture, a place where history was being written, quite literally, in stone and in the lives of its people. And the most striking testament to their power? Those pyramids, standing silent guard, promising eternal rest and a gentle history lesson as you continue to absorb the serene, ancient atmosphere of Napata. Your journey takes a fascinating turn, one that truly elevates the kingdom of Kush from a footnote to a starring role in ancient history. For a significant period, Kush wasn't just a powerful neighbor, it was the ruler. We're now moving into the era of the 25th dynasty of Egypt, a time when the pharaohs on the throne of the two lands weren't from the Delta or the Nile Valley's traditional centers, but from the heart of Nubia, from Kush itself. These were the Black Pharaohs, and their reign was a period of both profound influence and deep cultural exchange. Imagine yourself walking through the grand temples of Karnak or Luxor, perhaps just after the sun has set, leaving the massive stone columns silhouetted against the twilight skies. But instead of seeing the familiar depictions of Egyptian pharaohs with their thin, aquiline noses, you notice the distinct, often fuller features of the Kushite rulers: broad shoulders, strong jaws, and the characteristic double uraeus, cobra, on their crowns, symbolizing their mastery over both Kush and Egypt. It's a subtle yet powerful shift, a quiet assertion of a new power on the ancient stage. This isn't a scene of violent conquest as much as a gradual, almost inevitable assimilation of power. One mainstream historical fact that defines this period is that the Kushite pharaohs, starting with Paye around 747 BCE, ruled Egypt for nearly a century. They saw themselves not as foreign invaders, but as the rightful preservers of traditional Egyptian religion and culture, which they felt had become decadent and fragmented under the preceding dynasties. Piye, for instance, famously launched a campaign to purify Egypt, restoring temples and reaffirming the worship of Amun. So, while they might have looked different, their commitment to Egyptian traditions was, arguably, stronger than some native born rulers before them. Now, for a quirky tidbit about their reign, the Kushite pharaohs were known for their deep piety, especially towards Amun. They would often travel great distances to consult oracles and perform elaborate rituals. There's one rather charming story, perhaps apocryphal, that suggests they believed their success was so tied to divine favor that they would occasionally consult sacred ram-headed statues of Amun, whose nod or movement was interpreted as a sign of approval for their next military or political move. Imagine a powerful pharaoh waiting patiently for a stone ram to give them the go ahead. It certainly adds a gentle layer of humor to their otherwise serious pursuit of divine legitimacy. Perhaps their generals just needed a longer lunch break. Historians still argue whether the Kushite rule over Egypt was truly a golden age for Egyptian culture, or if it was simply a period of foreign dominion, albeit a relatively benign one. Some scholars emphasize their role in revitalizing Egyptian artistic and religious traditions, pointing to a conscious effort to restore ancient glories. Others suggest that while they were respectful of Egyptian culture, their primary goal was still the consolidation of their own power and economic interests. It's a nuanced debate, offering plenty of gentle pondering as you drift closer to slumber. As your mental journey continues, you might consider the sheer logistical feat of ruling two such vast and distinct lands. Imagine the slow, painstaking communication, the need for trusted officials, and the endless diplomatic dance required to keep such an empire cohesive. The Kushites managed it for a time, creating a powerful interconnected realm that stretched from the Mediterranean coast deep into the heart of Africa. Their armies were formidable, their wealth immense, and their cultural influence, though sometimes subtle, was undeniable. The very notion of a powerful African kingdom based far south of Egypt, rising to rule one of the world's most ancient civilizations, is a soothing reminder that history is always more complex and often more surprising than our textbooks might initially suggest. The quiet confidence of these rulers, their belief in their divine right, settled like a heavy, comforting cloak over the land. Having explored the grandeur of Napata and the powerful reign of the Black Pharaohs in Egypt, our sleepy journey now guides you further south, down the winding, life giving ribbon of the Nile. The reason for this gentle shift is the rise of a new capital, a city that would truly define the later period of Kushite history, Meroe. Imagine leaving behind the familiar, more arid landscapes of Napata and entering a region where the Nile made a wide, sweeping bend, creating a more fertile and slightly wetter environment. You feel the air grow a little softer, perhaps catching the faint scent of acacia trees or distant cultivation. Meroe, located between the fifth and sixth cataracts of the Nile, became the capital of Kush around 590 BCE, after the Kushite pharaohs were eventually pushed out of Egypt by the Assyrians. But this wasn't a retreat into insignificance. It was a strategic pivot, a reorientation that allowed Kush to thrive independently for centuries more. Think of it as a conscious decision to shift their focus from vying for control of Egypt to developing their own unique identity and economic strength. It was a quieter kind of power, perhaps, but no less significant. One mainstream historical fact about Meroe is its remarkable longevity as a capital, flourishing for nearly 1,000 years. This span saw the development of a distinct Meroitic culture with its own artistic styles, religious practices, and, perhaps most notably, its own unique writing system. While Napata had been heavily influenced by Egypt, Meroe truly forged its own path, drawing on its indigenous roots and expanding its reach through extensive trade networks. You can almost feel the slow, steady rhythm of this long-lived city, a heartbeat echoing through the sands of time. Now, For a quirky tidbit about Meroe's location, it wasn't just chosen for its fertile land or strategic position on the Nile. The area around Meroe was rich in iron ore and timber, crucial resources for smelting iron. While Egypt was primarily a Bronze Age civilization, Kush, particularly Meroe, became an important center for iron production in ancient Africa. Imagine the glow of furnaces against the night sky, the clang of hammers on anvils, and the hot, smoky scent of a busy iron workshop. It's a vivid contrast to the usual quiet, sleepy scenes, but it's a testament to the industrious spirit of the Meroitic people. It's hard work, but someone had to forge all those useful tools and weapons. Historians still argue whether the move to Meroe represented a complete cultural break from the Egyptianized traditions of Napata, or if it was a gradual evolution with continuous borrowing and adaptation. Some scholars point to the rapid development of the Meroitic script and distinct art styles as evidence of a conscious disengagement from Egypt. Others emphasize the continued reverence for Egyptian deities like Amun and Isis, and the persistence of pyramid building, albeit in a different style, as signs of enduring cultural ties. The quiet hum of scholarly debate is a perfect accompaniment to a peaceful evening. As you mentally stroll through the nascent streets of Meroe, you might notice the beginnings of grander structures emerging from the humble mud brick, temples dedicated to local deities alongside those honoring Egyptian gods, a testament to the cultural fusion. You might see traders arriving from distant lands, their camels laden with goods, bringing the sounds and smells of other cultures to this burgeoning hub. The air, though warm, might carry a faint metallic tang from the burgeoning ironworks, a subtle hint of the industrial might that would come to define the city. This wasn't just a place to live, it was a powerhouse, slowly forging its destiny. In the heart of Africa, a powerful reminder that history is full of unexpected shifts and quiet transformations. As you settle deeper into the quiet hum of Meroe, you begin to appreciate why this city became the heart of Kushite power for so long. It wasn't just its position on the Nile or even its fertile lands, but a crucial element that allowed it to truly flourish: iron production. While other ancient civilizations were still heavily reliant on bronze, Meroe entered the Iron Age with gusto, becoming a significant metallurgical hub in ancient Africa. Imagine the atmosphere as you mentally wander into the industrial heart of Meroe. You're not just seeing markets or temples now, you're hearing the rhythmic clank and hiss of furnaces, smelling the sharp, smoky scent of charcoal and molten metal. Picture the tall, conical slag heaps rising like mini mountains on the city's outskirts, the waste products of centuries of iron smelting. These aren't just piles of rock, they're monuments to Meroe's industrial might, silent testimony to a sophisticated understanding of metallurgy. You might even catch a glimpse of the glowing orange interior of a furnace and the silhouettes of workers, their faces streaked with soot, skillfully tending the fiery behemoth. It's a busy, industrious scene, a stark contrast to the sleepy quiet we've mostly indulged in so far, but a vital part of Kush's story. One mainstream historical fact that highlights Meroe's significance in this regard is that it was one of the earliest and most important centers of ironworking in sub-Saharan Africa. The ability to produce iron in large quantities gave Kush a distinct advantage. It meant stronger tools for agriculture, allowing for greater food production. It meant more effective weapons for their armies, crucial for defense and maintaining trade routes. And it meant a valuable export commodity that could be traded for other luxuries. This wasn't just about making stronger swords. It was about laying the groundwork for a more prosperous and secure society. Now, for a quirky tidbit about their iron production. While the Merwats were highly skilled, their furnaces weren't exactly high tech by modern standards. They often used a type of natural draft furnace, essentially a clay shaft that relied on prevailing winds or cleverly designed air vents to draw in oxygen. Imagine setting up your iron smelting operation based on the local breeze. It makes you appreciate the ingenuity required to harness nature's elements for industrial purposes, a kind of ancient, very low carbon footprint manufacturing. One can only hope they didn't have too many windless days that put production on hold. Historians still argue whether the development of iron technology in Meroe was an independent innovation or if it was introduced from elsewhere, perhaps from regions further north or even from across the Red Sea. The archaeological evidence suggests that while there might have been initial influences, the Meroites developed their own unique processes and became master ironworkers in their own right. It's a debate that touches upon the broader questions of technological diffusion in ancient Africa, and it's a truly fascinating one to quietly ponder as you drift off. As you conclude your mental visit to Meroe's ironworks, you feel the residual warmth radiating from the ancient slag heaps, a reminder of the heat and effort that went into shaping the kingdom's destiny. The air, though still dry, seems to hum with the memory of activity. This industrial strength wasn't just about creating tools and weapons, it was about fostering an advanced society that could support a thriving population, engage in sophisticated trade, and build the impressive structures we've already discussed. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer wasn't just a sound, it was the steady beat of Meroe's heart, a testament to its innovation and resilience, keeping the kingdom humming along for centuries. Having immersed ourselves in the industrious hum of Meroe's ironworks, our gentle historical exploration now shifts to something more ethereal, yet equally profound, the written word. Specifically, we're going to quietly examine the Meroitic script, a unique and still partially enigmatic writing system that truly sets Kush apart from its neighbors, particularly Egypt. Imagine sitting in a quiet, sun-drenched scriptorium, the faint scent of papyrus and ink in the air, as a scribe meticulously etches these distinctive symbols onto a roll of parchment or a stone tablet. It's a silent testament to a culture finding its own voice. Literally, while the early Kushites at Napata heavily adopted Egyptian hieroglyphs, the shift to Meroe saw the development of something entirely new and indigenous. This wasn't just a stylistic variation, it was a conscious creation, reflecting the Meroitic language itself, which is still largely a mystery to us today. You might notice the characters are simpler, more flowing, almost like a beautiful shorthand compared to the intricate pictorial representations of hieroglyphs. It's as if the Kushites decided, we appreciate your fancy bird pictures, but we need something a bit more streamlined for our daily paperwork and temple inscriptions. One mainstream historical fact about the Meroitic script is that it appeared in two forms: a hieroglyphic script used mainly for monumental inscriptions on temples and tombs, and a cursive script used for everyday documents and ostraca, pottery shards used for writing. The cursive form, especially, is far more practical for rapid writing, a sign of a society that was increasingly engaged in administration and commerce. Imagine trying to write a shopping list using tiny pictures of ducks and baskets. It would take ages. The Meroitic cursive, however, was designed for efficiency. Now, for a quirky tidbit, despite our best efforts, the Meroitic language itself remains largely undeciphered, even though the script can be phonetically read. This means we can pronounce the words, but we often don't know what they mean. It's like being able to perfectly read a recipe written in a foreign language, but having no idea if it's for a delicious cake or a very complicated, entirely inedible rock. So, when you see those elegant Meroitic inscriptions, you're looking at a linguistic puzzle that has kept brilliant minds busy for decades. Perhaps in your sleep tonight, you'll have a sudden, profound breakthrough. Historians still argue whether the Meroitic script was influenced by Egyptian Demotic or even Greek alphabets, or if it was an entirely independent invention. The visual simplicity suggests some inspiration from alphabetic principles, but the phonetic system is distinctly Meroitic. It's a fascinating debate, touching upon the very nature of invention versus adaptation in ancient societies. The quiet hum of scholarly disagreement, once again, proves to be oddly soothing. As you conclude your gentle exploration of the Meroitic script, you might feel a lingering sense of respectful curiosity. These elegant symbols, whether carved into the sandstone of a temple or inked onto a fragile piece of papyrus, represent the voice of an entire civilization. They are the echoes of prayers, proclamations, trade agreements, and perhaps even ancient grocery lists, waiting patiently for someone to finally unlock their full meaning. It's a reminder that even when we can't fully understand every detail, the presence of such a sophisticated written language speaks volumes about the intelligence and cultural depth of the forgotten kingdom of Kush. The silence of these unread words invites a calm, sleepy contemplation. Our quiet journey through the kingdom of Kush now brings us to a place of eternal rest, yet also immense revelation. The royal burial grounds of Meroe. Having explored the bustling industries and sophisticated scripts of the living, it's time to gently consider how the Meroites honored their dead, particularly their rulers. Imagine the quiet reverence that must have permeated these sacred spaces where the lines between life and the afterlife blurred. You approach a field of pyramids, not the massive structures of Egypt, but smaller, more numerous, and remarkably steep. They rise like silent sentinels, catching the last rays of the setting sun, their angles sharp and precise. These pyramids, though modest in comparison to their northern counterparts, are a key part of Kushite identity. They weren't just monuments, they were carefully designed, eternal homes for their kings and queens, meant to facilitate their journey into the afterlife and ensure their continued influence. This is where a lot of the archaeological treasures that tell us about Meroitic culture have been found, offering a silent peek into their beliefs, their wealth, and their artistic sensibilities. One mainstream historical fact about Meroitic royal burials is that, similar to Egyptian practices, the deceased rulers were often interred with a rich array of grave goods, jewelry, pottery, furniture, and even weapons. These items were not merely decorative, they were believed to be essential for the journey through the underworld and for maintaining a comfortable existence in the afterlife. Think of it as ancient packing for a very, very long trip. You can almost hear the soft rustle of silk and linen, the glint of gold in the dim light of a newly sealed tomb, before the final, heavy stone was rolled into place. Now, for a quirky tidbit, unlike the Egyptian pharaohs, who were almost exclusively buried within their massive pyramids, the Meroitic rulers were typically buried in chambers beneath their pyramids. The pyramid itself served as a marker, a symbol of their divine status, and a gateway to the heavens, rather than a colossal burial vault. It's a subtle but fascinating architectural difference, perhaps suggesting a slightly different theological interpretation of the afterlife and the purpose of these grand structures. It's almost as if they preferred a bit more privacy for their eternal slumber. Historians still argue whether the practice of building pyramids in Kush was a direct continuation of Egyptian tradition or if it evolved independently after an initial period of cultural influence. Some scholars emphasize the distinct differences in construction and form, suggesting a unique Meroitic adaptation. Others highlight the clear lineage from Egyptian burial customs, even if the execution differed. It's a quiet debate, perfect for a moment of peaceful contemplation. As you wander through this silent city of the dead, you might notice the exquisite craftsmanship of the objects recovered from these tombs. Gold pectorals inlaid with semi precious stones, intricately carved offering tables, and pottery adorned with unique Meroitic motifs. Each artifact tells a story, a whisper from the past, about the people who created them and the rulers they honored. The very air around these pyramids feels different, charged with history and the quiet promise of ancient secrets. The sun, as it dips lower, casts long, dramatic shadows, making the pyramids seem to stretch towards the heavens, guiding your thoughts gently towards slumber. Our tranquil journey through the silent, pyramid dotted landscape of Meroe now brings us to one of the most captivating aspects of Kushite society, the remarkable role of its queens, known as kandakes. Imagine a powerful woman adorned in regal attire, her head held high, commanding respect and wielding real authority. These weren't just consorts, they were formidable rulers in their own right, leading armies, conducting diplomacy, and overseeing the prosperity of their kingdom. It's a refreshing departure from many ancient narratives where women often played more subdued roles. While many ancient civilizations were dominated by male rulers, Kush stands out for its strong tradition of female leadership. The Kandakes were not just symbolic figures, they were active political and military leaders. You might picture them not just in lavish palaces, but perhaps mounted on horseback, leading their troops or presiding over important council meetings, their voices echoing with wisdom and authority. It's a powerful image, one that quietly challenges many of our preconceived notions about ancient power structures. One mainstream historical fact about the Kandakes is their legendary defiance against the mighty Roman Empire. In 24 BCE, a Kandake named Amanirenas led her armies against Roman forces in Egypt. While the conflict eventually resulted in a peace treaty, her willingness to confront such a superpower and her subsequent ability to negotiate favorable terms speaks volumes about her strength and strategic prowess. Imagine the sheer audacity of standing up to Rome, a feat that would make even the most seasoned modern diplomat break into a nervous sweat. Now, for a quirky tidbit about their appearance. Many depictions of the Kandakes show them as rather robust and imposing figures, far from the slender, idealized beauty often portrayed in Egyptian art. This suggests that physical power and maturity were perhaps valued aesthetic qualities in Kushite royalty rather than a youthful, delicate physique. So, if you were a Kandake, you might have been admired for your imposing presence, a silent testament to your strength and authority, not just your graceful movements. It's a wonderful example of differing cultural beauty standards. Historians still argue whether the succession to the throne always passed through the female line, or if the Kandakes were chosen for their personal abilities and leadership qualities. While the evidence suggests a strong matrilineal influence, the exact mechanisms of their ascent to power remain a subject of scholarly debate. Was it a strict rule of inheritance, or a more flexible system where powerful women could emerge through different means? The quiet hum of this discussion provides a gentle intellectual exercise as you drift. As you conclude your contemplation of the Kandakes, you feel a deep sense of admiration for these powerful women who shaped the destiny of Kush. Their legacy is not just one of political power, but of cultural influence, as they often championed Meroitic art, religion, and identity. Their strength and independence are a soothing reminder that leadership can take many forms, and that often the most fascinating stories are found in the overlooked corners of history. The very air seems to hum with the quiet strength of these forgotten queens, guiding you gently into a deeper state of relaxation. Our journey now takes a turn from the powerful figures of Kush to the arteries that connected their world, the vast and intricate trade routes. Imagine the bustling markets of Meroe, not just with local vendors, but with merchants arriving from distant lands, their caravans laden with exotic goods. The air would be thick with the scent of spices, the murmur of many languages, and the gentle clatter of pottery and precious metals. Kush, strategically located between the African interior, the Red Sea, and the Nile, became a crucial crossroads of ancient commerce. This wasn't just about moving goods. It was about the exchange of ideas, technologies, and cultures. The Kushites, nestled comfortably in their golden kingdom, were far from isolated. They were active participants in a global network, their influence extending well beyond their borders. Even if those borders were often shifting sands, you might envision a camel caravan slowly approaching the city gates, its bells jingling softly, carrying wares from lands you've only read about in myths. One mainstream historical fact that underscores Kush's importance in trade is its central role in the African Red Sea trade. Gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animal skins flowed north through Kush, destined for Egypt, the Mediterranean, and even further afield. In return, the Kushites received luxury goods from the Roman Empire, such as fine wines and glassware, as well as practical items like tools and textiles. This wasn't a one-way street of exploitation. It was a vibrant, mutually beneficial exchange that fueled the wealth of the kingdom. The gentle clinking of coins and the rustle of traded fabrics would have been the soundtrack of their prosperity. Now, for a quirky tidbit about their trade goods beyond the well-known items, archaeological digs have sometimes unearthed surprising imports, like small, carved figurines from as far away as India, or even a few pieces of Chinese silk. Imagine a Meroitic noble, perhaps a Kandake, draped in a garment of shimmering silk, a material that had traveled thousands of miles across continents and seas to reach her. It speaks to the truly globalized nature of the ancient world, even if the global part took a very, very long time to traverse. It just goes to show everyone appreciates a little bit of luxury. Historians still argue whether the decline of the Red Sea trade routes, perhaps due to shifting political powers or the rise of new trade hubs, played a significant role in Kush's eventual decline. Some scholars believe that changes in trade patterns severely impacted Meroe's economy. Others emphasize internal factors or environmental changes as more dominant reasons for its weakening. It's a quiet, complex debate, reminding us that no single cause ever fully explains the ebb and flow of civilizations. As you conclude your mental wander through the ancient trade routes, you feel the lingering sense of distant lands and diverse cultures that converged in Kush, the ghost of ancient caravans, the murmuring of forgotten languages, and the silent shimmer of long lost treasures fill the air. These routes weren't just lines on a map, they were lifelines, connecting Kush to the wider world and ensuring its enduring prosperity, even if that prosperity ultimately faded into the sands of time. The steady rhythm of footsteps on the dusty paths, the creaking of wagon wheels, and the gentle lowing of camels all contribute to a soothing soundscape for your journey into slumber. Having traced the ancient trade routes that brought the world to Kush's doorstep, we now zoom in on the very heart of its prosperity, the glinting source of its power and allure. Gold. Imagine standing on a sun-baked rock face, the air shimmering with heat as you watch ancient miners, perhaps with sweat gleaming on their skin, meticulously extract this precious metal from the earth. This wasn't just any mineral. Gold was the lifeblood of Kush, fueling its economy, adorning its rulers, and enchanting civilizations far and wide. Kush's geographical location in Nubia, a region whose very name is derived from the ancient Egyptian word for gold, nub, meant it was blessed with abundant gold deposits. For millennia, gold from Kush made its way north to Egypt and later across the Red Sea, becoming a cornerstone of ancient international commerce. You might hear the soft, rhythmic clink of a pickaxe against rock, or the splash of water as gold bearing sand is sifted by hand. It's a slow, painstaking process, but one that yielded unimaginable wealth. One mainstream historical fact about Kushite gold mining is that they employed various techniques, from surface alluvial mining, where gold was washed from riverbeds, to more complex underground shaft mining in quartz veins. This indicates a sophisticated understanding of geology and engineering for their time. Imagine miners descending into dimly lit, narrow shafts, carrying oil lamps to illuminate their arduous work. It was dangerous and laborious, but the allure of gold was a powerful motivator. Now for a quirky tidbit about gold in ancient times. Gold was often seen not just as a metal, but as a divine substance, symbolizing the flesh of the gods, particularly the sun god Ra in Egypt. For the Kushites, who deeply revered Amun, often associated with the sun, gold held similar sacred significance. So, when they mined gold, they weren't just extracting a commodity, they were, in a sense, touching the divine. It added a spiritual dimension to the back-breaking labor, perhaps making those long hours underground feel a bit more heavenly. Historians still argue whether the demand for Kushite gold from external powers, particularly Egypt and later Rome, drove the intensity of their mining operations, or if the Kushites primarily extracted it for their own internal wealth and display. It's a chicken or egg question. Did the demand create the supply, or did the abundant supply stimulate the demand? This quiet debate on ancient economics is a soothing mental exercise as you drift. As you conclude your mental exploration of the gold mines, you feel the invisible weight of centuries of extracted wealth. The very landscape around Meroe seems to hum with the memory of this glittering resource. The gold wasn't just a symbol of power, it was the engine that allowed Kush to build its pyramids, forge its iron, and maintain its independence for so long. It was the radiant core of their forgotten kingdom, shining silently through the millennia, guiding your thoughts gently into a peaceful slumber. Having explored the glittering wealth of Kush's gold mines, let's now shift our focus to the quieter, more intimate aspects of life within the kingdom, daily routines in Meroe. Imagine the gentle rhythm of a typical day in this ancient city, a far cry from the dramatic pronouncements of pharaohs or the clash of armies. You might hear the distant crow of a rooster as dawn breaks, painting the sky with soft hues of orange and pink, a tranquil start to a day millennia ago. Life for the ordinary Merwat was in many ways similar to that of common folk in other ancient societies, yet with its own distinct flavor. Most people would have been engaged in agriculture, tending fields watered by the Nile, or herding livestock. Others would have been artisans, merchants, or laborers, contributing to the city's vibrant economy. You can almost feel the dry dust beneath your feet as you mentally stroll through the unpaved streets, past mud brick homes, with perhaps a small courtyard where families would gather. One mainstream historical fact about daily life is that the Nile was central to everything. Beyond providing water for irrigation, it was the main source of food fish being a crucial part of the Meroitic diet. The river also served as a highway, connecting communities and facilitating trade. Imagine fishermen casting their nets at sunrise, their small boats gliding silently over the water, bringing in the day's catch. It was a life deeply intertwined with the natural cycles of the river, a slow, dependable rhythm. Now, for a quirky tidbit. While we often associate ancient Egypt with elaborate cosmetics, the Meroites also had their own beauty routines. They used ground malachite for eye paint, much like the Egyptians, and evidence suggests they used oils and scented balms to moisturize their skin in the dry climate. Imagine the morning ritual, perhaps a mother carefully applying kohl around her child's eyes, not just for beauty, but also to protect against the harsh glare of the sun or ward off insects. A little ancient sunscreen, if you will, perhaps even a bit more effective than that crocodile dung version we remembered earlier. Historians still argue whether the social structure in Meroe was strictly hierarchical, with a rigid class system, or if there was more fluidity and opportunity for social mobility, perhaps even for commoners who gained wealth through trade or craft. While royalty and priests certainly held power, the evidence of a thriving merchant class suggests a more dynamic society than sometimes portrayed. It's a quiet debate that reminds us that ancient societies were rarely as monolithic as they sometimes appear in simplified narratives. As you conclude your gentle peek into Meroitic daily life, you feel the soft echoes of their routines, the murmur of conversation, the distant laughter of children, the rhythmic sound of a grinding stone preparing grain for the day's meal. It's a peaceful, grounding sensation, a reminder of the timeless aspects of human existence, even in a forgotten kingdom. The warmth of the sun on your imaginary skin, the gentle sounds of an ancient day unfolding, all contribute to a deep sense of calm, inviting you to drift further into the quiet annals of history. As the quiet hum of Meroitic daily life gently fades, our journey now turns to a more somber, yet equally fascinating aspect of history, the mysterious decline of this once powerful kingdom. Imagine the slow, almost imperceptible shift in the air from the vibrant bustle of a thriving city to a quieter, more subdued atmosphere, as if a great secret is being whispered by the shifting sands themselves. No empire lasts forever, and Kush was no exception. Its end wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event, but a gradual fading, a slow unwinding of centuries of prosperity. There's no single, universally accepted reason for Kush's eventual demise, which makes it all the more intriguing to ponder in the calm of the night. It's like a historical whodunit, but without the dramatic reveals, just a lot of gentle speculation. You might picture the last few Meroitic traders returning from distant lands, their caravans lighter, the markets a little less crowded, a subtle hint that the Golden Age was drawing to a close. One mainstream historical fact concerning the decline points to the rising power of the kingdom of Aksum in modern-day Ethiopia to Kush's south and east. Aksum, a formidable trading power in its own right, eventually rose to dominance, and some historical texts, notably the Monumentum Adulatanum from Aksumite King Ezana, boast of military campaigns against the Nubian kingdoms in the 4th century CE. Imagine the distant rumble of Aksumite armies, a new power emerging on the ancient stage, slowly encroaching on Kushite territory and trade routes. Now, for a quirky tidbit about the decline, some theories suggest environmental factors played a role, specifically deforestation. Meroe's extensive iron industry, which we explored earlier, required vast amounts of wood for charcoal production. Over centuries, this could have led to widespread deforestation around the city, making the land less arable and perhaps even altering local weather patterns. Imagine the Meroitic ironworkers unknowingly contributing to the long-term decline of their own resource base. Each tree felled for the furnace, a tiny step towards the kingdom's end. It's a sobering thought, but a quiet one. Historians still argue whether internal factors, such as political instability or changes in the royal succession, contributed significantly to Kush's weakening, while external pressures from Aksum and the shifting dynamics of Red Sea trade are often cited. The possibility of internal strife, perhaps quiet power, struggles within the ruling elite, cannot be entirely dismissed. Was it a collapse from within, or a conquest from without, or a gentle combination of both? The questions linger, a soothing backdrop to your thoughts. As you conclude your contemplation of Kush's decline, you feel a sense of the inevitable passage of time, the rise and fall of civilizations. The vibrant city of Meroe, once a beacon of power and wealth, gradually recedes into the sands, its pyramids becoming silent monuments to a forgotten past. Yet, even in its fading, there's a certain quiet dignity, a testament to a millennium of enduring culture and influence. The gentle sigh of the wind through the ancient ruins seems to whisper tales of endings and new beginnings, guiding you deeper into a peaceful slumber. Despite its eventual decline, the kingdom of Kush didn't simply vanish from the historical record without a trace. Instead, its essence, its cultural DNA, gently permeated the lands it once dominated, leaving echoes in the sands that persist even today. Imagine the quiet resilience of a river, even after its banks shift, its waters still flowing, carrying the memories of what once was. The end of Meroe wasn't a sudden silence, but a fading hum, allowing new voices and new cultures to emerge, often built upon the foundations laid by Kush. After the fall of Meroe in the 4th century CE, the region of Nubia fragmented into several smaller kingdoms, notably Nobatia, Makuria, and Alodia. These successor states continued many Kushite traditions, albeit with new influences, most notably from Christianity, which gradually spread throughout the region. You might picture the familiar shape of a Meroitic pyramid giving way to the humble, cross-topped dome of an early Christian church, a quiet testament to a changing world, but one that still honored its past. One mainstream historical fact about these echoes is that the Meroitic language, or at least elements of it, likely survived in some form within the spoken languages of these later Nubian kingdoms, while the written script eventually fell out of use. The linguistic legacy would have persisted, much like ancient roots nourishing new shoots. Imagine the gentle cadence of a language spoken for centuries, softly adapting and evolving rather than simply disappearing. It's a comforting thought, a quiet refusal to be entirely erased by time. Now, for a quirky tidbit, even after the decline of Meroe, the tradition of building pyramids, albeit on a much smaller scale and for different purposes, persisted in some localized areas for a while. These later structures were often more symbolic than grand, a quiet nod to a glorious past. It's almost as if some communities just couldn't quite let go of the architectural style, a subtle but enduring homage to the old ways, perhaps with a touch of nostalgia for the golden age. Historians still argue whether the transition from Kushite polytheism to Christianity in Nubia was a gradual, peaceful assimilation, or if it involved periods of conflict and resistance. While archaeological evidence suggests a relatively smooth conversion over centuries, the exact dynamics of this profound cultural shift remain a subject of gentle academic discussion. Was it a complete spiritual overhaul, or a quiet blending of old beliefs with new? The answers are not always clear, leaving room for peaceful contemplation. As you conclude your quiet reflection on Kush's lingering echoes, you feel the persistent pulse of history, how cultures intertwine and transform rather than simply vanishing. The memory of the black pharaohs, the clang of the iron smelters, and the wisdom of the Kandakes didn't disappear. They were absorbed, transmuted, and carried forward by the people of Nubia. The very air around these ancient sites seems to hum with the continuity of human experience, a soothing testament to enduring legacies, guiding you gently into the final moments of our journey. As our long, quiet journey through the forgotten kingdom of Kush reaches its gentle conclusion, we arrive at the profound question of its legacy and lost history. Imagine the soft, lingering twilight over the desert, casting long shadows across the silent pyramids of Meroe. Even though the kingdom faded, its contributions to the tapestry of human civilization, though often overlooked, are immense and quietly enduring. It's like discovering a forgotten, intricately woven thread in a magnificent ancient tapestry, one that adds depth and richness you never knew was there. Kush was not merely a buffer state or a mirror of Egypt. It was a vibrant, innovative civilization in its own right, developing unique political structures, artistic styles, and technological advancements. Its story reminds us that history is vast and multifaceted, filled with powerful narratives beyond the most famous empires. You can almost feel the whispers of its people, their triumphs, and their daily lives, rising from the dry earth, a silent testament to their enduring presence. One mainstream historical fact that underscores Kush's enduring legacy is its role in connecting the Mediterranean world with sub-Saharan Africa. Through its extensive trade networks, Kush facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures across vast distances, influencing regions far beyond its borders. Think of it as a crucial ancient bridge, allowing the flow of people and products, gently shaping the development of entire continents. Its very existence broadened the ancient world's horizons. Now for a quirky tidbit about its lost history. For many centuries, the kingdom of Kush was largely unknown to the Western world, its history buried beneath layers of sand and the overshadowing narrative of Egypt. It was only through dedicated archaeological work in the 19th and 20th centuries that the scale and sophistication of this civilization truly began to emerge. Imagine intrepid explorers painstakingly uncovering these forgotten pyramids and temples, slowly piecing together a story that had been lost to time. It's a testament to the quiet persistence of history, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. Historians still argue whether the long period of Kushite rule over Egypt profoundly influenced later Egyptian cultural development, or if the impact was more superficial and temporary. While the direct reign of the Black Pharaohs was relatively brief in the grand scheme of Egyptian history, the two cultures had interacted for millennia, leading to a deep and complex intermingling of traditions. It's a gentle academic debate that reminds us that cultural exchange is rarely a simple one-way street, but often a subtle dance of influence and adaptation. As you consider the quiet, enduring legacy of Kush, allow yourself to drift into a deep state of peace. The Golden Kingdom, with its iron smelters, its powerful queens, and its unique script, may have faded from overt prominence, but its story continues to offer valuable insights into the richness and diversity of ancient African civilizations. The very concept of a forgotten kingdom is a comforting one, suggesting that there are always more quiet wonders to uncover, more peaceful histories to explore. Let the dust motes of ancient Meroe, dancing in the last rays of the setting sun, lull you into a profound and restful sleep. The soft light of the imaginary desert sun now dips below the horizon, and a cool, gentle breeze whispers across the ancient landscape. The pyramids, once symbols of a vibrant kingdom, stand silent and still against the deepening twilight, their sharp outlines softening into the velvety night. You've walked through bustling markets, felt the heat of iron furnaces, and imagined the dignified presence of powerful queens. Now, all those vivid details begin to blur, dissolving into the quiet comfort of memory, the sounds of the past, the distant clang of a hammer, the murmur of ancient voices, the gentle lapping of the Nile. They all recede, replaced by the calming stillness of the present moment. Your thoughts, once engaged with the mysteries of Kush, now float like gentle clouds across a vast, empty sky. There's nothing more to learn tonight, nothing more to analyze, just the peaceful sensation of letting go, of allowing the deep quiet of history to envelop you completely. Feel the quiet descent into rest, your breathing growing slow and even. The story of the forgotten kingdom has been told, its secrets whispered, and its echoes absorbed. Now, it's time for you to become part of the quiet, the stillness, the deep, dark comfort of sleep. Let your mind clear, your body relax, and surrender to the soothing peace that follows a journey through the quiet corners of the past. The sand is soft beneath your feet, the stars are beginning to twinkle, and the long, deep night awaits.